My name is Nigel. I'm the Coach Education Manager for the Irish Football Association, which is Northern Ireland. Previously I was the Elite Performance Manager for the young developing players, but now it's specifically Coach Education that I manage. The loneliness is based on the fact that in Europe we seem to be noticing that a lot of the top youth international teams at tournaments are playing with one single striker on his own, and quite often he is tasked with not just being the focal point for attacking play and also the main goal scorer as such, but he's also been asked to contribute significantly in terms of defensive role, which means he's now doing a significant amount of running out of possession into channel areas, closing full-backs down, and the consequence of that is he's not in the position really that his role should be, which is through the middle and focusing on scoring goals. So the 2 points are a single player up front, he can often be isolated on his own, and secondly, there's too much pressure now on what's being asked of him. If he's the striker, let him be the striker, albeit with some limited defensive roles, but certainly restricting the amount of running he has to do. Well, I think that the coach has got to understand that if he wants to use the number 9 effectively, he's got to leave him in possession. So you restrict the amount of responsibility he has defensively, keep him within a narrow area, maximum width of the 18, and then you designate defensive responsibilities to other players, and they need to understand that they will now do that work in the defensive zones that you've marked out for them, and that when they win possession they now know that the number 9 is already in possession, so that you can play forward instantly into him and now basically set up your counter-attack. Part of the reason why I was looking at this was A, our own country wasn't producing central strikers, and secondly, in terms of European football, when we looked at the Champions League last time round, 7 out of the top 10 goal scorers were South American. So there had to be a reason why this was happening. Either it was because coaches were asking the wrong thing of strikers, or we weren't developing them in the youth stages as players, or coaches were playing systems that didn't suit the role of a striker to make him effective. So I think at the moment we're beginning to get an understanding that we have to change the way we set up teams. Some teams are going back to 2 strikers and going back to the 4-4-2 system, or even the 3-5-2 system to get a second striker up with the number 9 to take some of the burden off him. So I think that's one of the solutions that they come up with, because to play there without some sort of sympathy from the coach and support from other players requires an awful lot of ability, and most players don't have it. So I think there'll be changes maybe to getting a support player up instead of one single striker. Well, in a sense, just on the definition, we would use the word drill more as just a repetitive practice, whereas this particular practice I'll do is much more challenging because it's got opposition, which then defines the challenges. The challenge would be how to find space as a midfielder to receive the ball, so what sort of movement he does, when does he make the movement, in other words, what is the trigger for him to know I now need to create space to come off. Then once he knows how to do that, you're then looking at the next issue, which is how does he receive the ball, the technical skills with the front foot or the back foot on the half turn, and you're also then encouraging the player to understand what's the most effective pass that he can make, which by obvious definition is to play forward again, to try and get through with penetration through the zones up into your striker area. So you put all that together, you create the practice, you put in the defender against them, you put in players that serve the ball in, you put in a direction to play, and you put in players at the top end that you want to play up to, so that replicates playing through the thirds in midfield, and then you focus on the technical aspects such as how you create space, how do you get turned, how do you shield the ball, when to pass, when to dribble, all of those then come into play. Well, I think they need to understand that quite often coaches will say, don't pass the ball into that player because he's marked. Give the pass to somebody that's free. Well, that may be okay if the player that's free is in a very good position. But the point I would make is, in football now, in a very fast game, quite often you have to consider playing the ball into somebody that's marked. So you've got to coach that type of situation. So I would hope coaches will go away and appreciate, well, let's coach situations in which midfield players will receive the ball in congested areas, spaces limited, pressure's tight on them, so they have to be able to deal in a tight area with heavy pressure and not lose possession of the ball. So they must put that in as a practice, not shy away from it. So that's one of the reasons why I put this practice on. Because if you want to play out from the back, the opposition aren't going to let you. They're not going to say, well, okay, we'll let you have a little bit of space. They're going to press you high. So if you haven't set up practices to get your players to understand how to deal with it, when it comes to the match at the weekend, they'll lose possession. Or the centre halves will not pass it to the player because he's marked, they'll just kick it up the pitch, and then it's 50-50 whether you win possession of it or the opposition get it.